Hi mortals, greetings in the future, where what is at stake is longevity. Are you prepared for the game? So let's see how far you can get on your path towards eternal life. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The game is on.
Ördög Nóra.
Nora Ördög, host of MVM Future Talks. She says that she's craving for long life, but it's important for her that it should be of quality life, physically and mentally. As she would put it, aging has only really hit her as a matter now that she has turned 40. She's frequently confronted with the fact that the picture she has about age is much younger than reality. She's trying to do her best for bodily and mental well-being, and she's motivated by her 2 children.
Hello, welcome everyone. This is the 5th MVM Future Talks, one of the most important scientific events in Hungary. Future Talks is a place, a talk show where science and trends are in the center. We are going to talk about trends that will change our future and the scientific results that are here, almost tangible for us. This year we turn 5 years old. That is quite old. We are ahead of 80% of businesses that don't reach their 5th birthday, but this also means that we are becoming old. Talking about old, this year's focus is on long life. Why do we need to live long or forever? Because the short is over, and sometimes people procrastinate. We think that we have time for everything, and then we will think that, oh, I wish I had more time to spend with my family members, my loved ones, to correct our mistakes, or just enjoy this beautiful life. According to science, today we have possibilities, but these raise many questions. Who will access all of this that science can allow? And if we live longer, how will we spend these lives? Will we have happy retired years, or will we have to work to finance this longer life? What burden will this put on people, society, whose budget will chronic illnesses will these burdens? And how about the till death do us apart vows that lasted for 20-30 years? Will they survive another 20-30 years? We are going to discuss these questions, and there will be 2 very distinct parts of our talk show. First, we will talk about long lives, and in the second part, we will talk about sci-fi a little bit. We will talk about technology-augmented human bodies and talk about how close these are to us, where science is in this regard. Rozina, Wossala and Gergely Szirmai are our fantastic ambassadors. I hope that many of you have seen their movies on MVM Future Talks' website, and they will also be here today, and we will talk about these topics with them. And we also have an audience. I will be very curious about your opinions in certain topics. I will ask you to vote at certain places. Everyone has a small gadget in their hands for later, but now please just put your hands up. If we think about the life expectancy at birth was 46 years in 1900. In 2000, it was around 74, 76 as a result of technological and scientific progress, and now there are new ways to treat diseases that were not curable before. How much to what extent are you interested in this topic? Are you interested in achieving longer lives? I think that is quite obvious. Someone is not. You are still very young. I think that's the reason. I was just trying to see the age of the participants. Is there any of you who is doing something to live longer? Just put up your hands. I see a bit fewer hands than before. There are many tools for us to live longer, but we do not necessarily take steps. Before I ask our first ambassador to join us, I would like to ask you to take part in a game. You will find a measuring tape under your chairs. Did you find it? Super. I would like to ask someone to come up next to me. Can I ask you, please, to join me? Please clap your hands for our participant. Thank you for participating in this game. So let's say that this measuring tape is our life. 1 centimeter is 1 year for example. According to statistics, the life expectancy is around 74 years. So please tear this measuring tape at 74 centimeters.
Na most az egy dolog, hogy 74 évig élhetünk, de ugye a nagy
we can live for 74 years, but how many of these do we spend healthily? Unfortunately, the last 11 years of women's life is spent in illness, according to the Central Statistics Office. So please, girls, tear off 11 from the end of your tape. And for men, it's 13. So they spend the last 13 years with illness.
Na most ugye a végéről kezdtük, tehát visszafelé
So we started in the end, but some years have already passed from your lives. Please tear off the tape at the centimeter, that is your age. So start it from the beginning.
Egyre rövidebb a cetli, ahogy látjuk.
It's shorter and shorter. And one more sad aspect. 1/3 of our lives are spent with sleeping, which is very important for health. But still, we cannot spend time with our family or ourselves in this time. So please tear off 1/3 of this tape, because from the rest of your lives, you will spend 1/3 of your time sleeping. Now, let's see how much we have left. What is that? 12 centimeters? 12 centimeters, that is 12 years. How old are you? 25. So, based on this math, you have 12 useful years left to spend with your family, friends, yourself, developing your skills, your free time. Thank you. Please take a seat with this thought. I didn't even dare to do this experiment, but I will do it in secret, maybe. But this is the sad truth. We really have to consider how we will spend the rest of our days, years. And if we didn't smoke, didn't drink alcohol, exercise every day, avoid stress, we could make our lives much longer. But it's not that easy. We cannot always do that, but science is helping us in many aspects already, and the amazing ambassador Rozina Wossala explored where we stand around the world, how much this topic is in the center around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, Rozina Wossala. At this year's MVM Future Talks, we are searching the secret of longevity.
Of course, anti-aging is a huge industry.
Biggest industry on the planet.
We want to bring the best treatments technologies available in the world.
Wow.
Red light therapy.
The future's already here?
Do we own it or are we the product?
This is nicotinamide riboside.
Should we allow this?
And then there's this whole other unknown, the microbiome.
We can create organs.
And we'll start 3D printing food.
These cells are alive.
A wearable device.
So this is a contact lens.
Your Oura Ring or Apple Watch or your Fitbit.
People don't realize that this is not science fiction anymore. Like, we're in this.
Szia, Rozina, gyere!
Hello, Rozina. Please join us. Would you dare to do this experiment with the measuring tape? I was thinking about these young people who will live the rest of their lives in anxiety and they will spend all their money on therapy. Well, please don't worry, it's not going to be that bad. Well, they don't have to spend it on therapy, but on a gym, on healthy orange juice, etc. There are many possibilities. Like I saw it in your movie, you were in exceptional places, and it's incredible that there are very advanced technologies in the world. Well, I'm very thankful for that, because in addition to what you saw, this was also an inner journey. It touched me very deeply, and I started in Helsinki, where in addition to learning about technological biohacking that you can see in the movie, and this was a conference, yes, and afterwards in Los Angeles, I saw that there are two very different viewpoints in America and in Europe. America is mostly focusing on consumption. There are salons, injections, or pills, maybe because they are a bit lazier or they work more, and they are expecting magic from a moment, from taking a pill, something instantaneous. Europeans, on the other hand, really think that the basis of all of this is what we have known for thousands of years: sleep, diet, exercise, and all of this goes back to ancient traditions, and they are looking for more natural sources such as adaptogenic mushrooms. And this is the first time I heard about them. But you have been interested in this topic for a long time. Yes, adaptogenic mushrooms. Actually, there are no there is no clinical evidence that they work. But did you, in order to have this intelligent talk, did you take some mushrooms? Yes, I do. I take a specific mushroom before I have some show or some talk, and this mushroom aids cognitive functions. And you also took some tests. I went to MediPredict Institute in Hungary, where they tested a microbiome. There were actually two microbiome tests. I already had my control work, and doctors will explain what the terms mean, because we would be here until tomorrow if I had to explain it. And I also took a genetics test. And I think if anyone wants to start out on this journey, they have to start with a good blood work and a dietitian and a good medical expert. Are there any questions left in you, or do you feel like you know a lot more about this topic than you ever wanted? On the one hand, yes. On the other hand, when you learn something, you will come up with new questions. And I think this is a very long process. And at every step, I think you have to tell yourself that I did a good job working for my health, working for myself, and I don't have to think about, oh, I made a mistake again, and I drank alcohol again, etc. But we have to be positive, and it's a lifelong journey. That's fantastic. I hope you will find answers to many of your questions. Now let's see our experts who will join us.
Ifjabb Duda Ernő.
Ernő Duda, CEO of Medipredict and president of the Hungarian Biotechnological Association. He is obsessed with longevity. His objective is to find innovative solutions for facilitating health aging. He believes in a healthier lifestyle, modern achievements of modern biotechnology, and the life-extending effect of preventive medicine.
Hello, Ernő, welcome.
Kiszúrtam a kezedben ezt a
I spotted that you have some documents in your hands. Is it Rozina's wheel? My
so
wheel?
it is?
Yes, exactly. So at the right time, we will check it as much as it is possible in this environment.
Well, I believe Rozina is very much looking forward to it.
Yes, yes, I'm very excited. Even at the first microbiome test, I learned so much, and I also changed some things in my diet, for example, and I'm really curious if in such a short time, because there were only 2 months between the two tests, I want to see if there are any results that are visible, but we are going to check it again. But now let's have our next expert join us.
Dr. Flora Zsófia Fedor, biologist, research project manager of Brain Vision Center. According to her, the secret of long life lies in getting to know our body and having customized medical care. She believes that doctors and scientists are doing their very best to keep us alive, but we are responsible for the quality of our life.
Hello, Flora. Hi. Welcome. We have so many questions for you too, so I hope you are prepared. But now, to fill this last chair, our third expert is arriving. Let's welcome him.
Szász Máté.
Mr. Máté Szász, neurobiologist, sport and prevention diagnostics expert. He finds the key to longevity in a combination of 19th century rhythm of life and 21st century medical technology. He says that the wizard who is stirring the cauldron is not a geneticist nor microbiologist or a psychiatrist, but the universal mind who recognizes what ingredients are still missing from making the secret sauce perfect.
Hello, Máté. Please take a seat. Do you know already what this secret magical potion is?
Well, this secret sauce is actually being cooked all the time, and you put new ingredients into it, you take something out of it, its texture and taste is constantly changing, and what's really interesting about it is that you should actually sip into it every day, and we should actually feel the impact of it and taste of it at the very end. And the problem of this longevity matter is that it's really hard to test, and by the time we test it, we won't know what the results are.
Yes, and from this aspect, this generation is a pioneer, because I think this is the first time that this topic is in the focus. You, who are so deeply involved in this topic, to what extent do you also comply with the rules that you discovered? Well, who should go first? Okay, I will go first. Yes, it's a typical question of all of us are humans, and I think that in our everydays we cannot expect too much from ourselves, just small taps, making small changes and striving for the best. Maybe Máté can give more insights on this.
Well, I'm the type of person who needs to be scared so that I should actually heed someone's words. And I've been criticized many times that I talk a lot about healthy diet, and it doesn't really show when it comes to me. But I think that, yes, over the past several years, I started adjusting my lifestyle because I was scared. Several years ago, there was a moment in my life when I got a sign and I was terribly scared. And obviously, I have 4 children, so it bestows some level of responsibility on me, and I should have some concrete plans. And I changed my lifestyle and changed the way I eat, and I'm 44, and this was the best year of my life. I haven't felt this good for quite some time, and the way I feel myself is much, much better and definitely shows when it comes to my results, for example, laboratory results.
The similar threatening,
yes, I do.
scary document.
I did receive these kinds of folders, and I scared myself with them, and 2 to 3 months of change showed in, for example, results in terms of blood pressure or the way you just wake up and the way you feel yourself in the morning.
We are going to ask Ernő as well, but we have one more expert who can't be here with us in the studio in person, but he will contribute to today's talk in a form of video message. He is none else but Jason Silva, who is a real superstar in the topic, but not only in this topic, as he is a director, futurist, philosopher, television personalities. He actually directed the Brain Games series, which is one of the most watched series in the history of National Geography, and he is referred to as Timothy Lear of the viral era of our time because his presentations are of a tremendous impact. And he specifically sent us a message talking with the editor-in-chief of MVM Future Talks, Pál Honti. So let's see what initial thoughts he has for us.
Do we even need a longer life? I mean, how long? I mean, personally, how long do you wish to live, or what would you do with your longer life?
You know, every time I walk into a library, I'm filled with curiosity, filled with a hunger for how much more there is to know, filled with a desire to explore the cosmos of consciousness and knowledge. And then I get hit with this feeling like the world starts caving in and I feel everything shrink because of this idea of my limited lifespan. And I've felt this anxiety since I was a teenager, which is why I've been emotionally invested in advances of science and technology and what some call biotechnology, which means mastering the information processes of biology, which increasingly is going to provide for us a kind of knobs and levers approach to hacking our own biology, to hacking the very software of life. And what this could potentiate, I think, is the capacity to decide how long we get to live. Instead of being victims of entropy, victims of the second law of thermodynamics, human beings could potentially become as gods. As Ellen Harrington said, we must never forget we are cosmic revolutionaries, not stooges conscripted to advance a natural order that kills everyone. And as Ray Kurzweil was once asked, you know, don't you think it's death that gives meaning to life? And he says, no, it's life that gives meaning to life, and what we do with life, which is to create knowledge and poetry and architecture and art. And so, yeah, my view is the more time we have, the better. You know, I want vaster horizons for my exploration, for places and spaces that my consciousness could probe and explore. And I want that for the entire human species.
Well, indeed, he is talking in a very impulsive way about the topic, and I think we should talk with this aspect. So what can we do in order to have a longer and better life? To what extent it is a question of money? I think Rozina can tell us about this, how much it is a matter of finances, along her example from California, or how much is it our own choice? And Ernő, please tell us about, in connection with your own life.
I knew that I would have to say something about this topic. Just like in other walks of life, obviously we have to keep the 2080 rule. That is, living like an depriving ourselves of certain joys is not what we should aim for. But if in 80% of our life we pay attention to these very simple things like taking exercise, like sleeping well, like not eating hamburger all the time, and this is the way we manage our stress levels. So if we pay attention to these minute things, for example, taking the stairs instead of taking the elevator, I think this is what matters.
Small choices and decisions.
If we pay attention to these things in our everyday lives, then that's going to be good. Nobody died in going to the festival, to a festival once.
There are some cases.
So what I'm saying is that obviously time and time again endorphins are going to give you some joy, and that is worth sort of giving up some of the rules intermittently, for example your intermittent fasting. So sometimes you have to feel yourself good, but the day-to-day minute decisions are the ones that's going to decide how you live.
But in the meantime, Máté said that he feels better. Also, if he adheres to these rules, so the object would be, the aim would be to have a longer life while enjoying it. Yeah, absolutely. I would mix the two opinions, and I would say that I think mental health is very important that I would like to underline. We usually only talk about physical health, but also on the other hand, physiological health cannot be realized without being conscious about our mental health. It's not a coincidence that we are using the word and the expression mindfulness without consciously taking steps towards our mental health, what is good to us, and also we also take care about our own physical signals, and we also listen to them. Ernő talked about changes which not only depends on our financial background, how much you sleep, whether I go jogging, whether I miss that one glass of wine. How much is it a question of money, or it's just a switch in our mindset? What do you think? I think very important is to get the basics right, which we're talking about. And this also entails, with whoever I have talked, mission, to have a mission in front of us so that we wake up in the morning knowing what our mission in life is, what we want to do. We take care of our loved ones, we spend time in communities, mental and spiritual aspects of all of this, and additionally sleeping, physical movements and exercises. And if we have all that right, then of course finances can add to all of that, because currently on the world, all around the world, everything is accessible. Everything can be bought. I saw tens of billions of dollars spent to cosmetic treatments. Johnson, for example, there are some persons who spend $2 billion, for example, Jason, to reverse aging. And they say that at the age of 50, his heart is at 37, his skin is 18-year-old. Well, I would actually expect and watch it a bit closer. And his lungs have the capacity and the fitness of an 18-year-old. But that cost him $2 billion per year and 24 hours per day, because he's constantly dealing with it all day long. Yes, but Ernő actually mentioned the topic. Please share that with us.
Yeah. So obviously I'm very much interested in these biohacking methods, and I do experiment with these. So I'd like to call your attention to the fact that Brian Johnson, who really doesn't do anything else just to keep himself young, he's actually a part of a big competition which is going on in the biohacking community, which is called the Rejuvenation Competition. We have some pieces of technology today with which you can actually decrease biological age. You can measure it quite accurately, and these people, through legal and not so legal means, are doing some experiments on themselves, and they measure how much they age. And the person that I mentioned is called Julie Gibson Clark, who came in second. And she's much ahead of Brian Johnson.
Much money he
and
spends
this is what I would like to tell you,
year.
is that Julie is special with regard to the fact that she is a housewife, a suburban housewife, who's got an 8 to 4 job. She doesn't have a cryosauna. She doesn't inject anything beneath the skin. She doesn't take 70 different types of medicines. She just cooks for herself. She takes a lot of exercise, and her results are actually much better than those of these biohackers who spend their entire lives with these processes. And she is my age, and her biological age is between 40 and 41, and I was very curious about whether she looks exactly the way she looks in the photographs. And I met her a couple of weeks ago, and she really looks like she does in the pictures.
Is it
yeah,
not
obviously
it's genetics?
It's also dependent on genetics.
Nodding with his hand.
So knowing our genetics can actually help us adjusting a lifestyle to various risk factors. Genetics only gives us chances and risk factors, but we can actually have an impact on that quite fundamentally. And I'm shaking my head because measuring our age with epigenetics is something that is very accurate, and we at our company also do these wide spectrum analyses. And what I think is that the concept of longevity is made up of two big things, like defense and offense on football. In football, for example, the things that we inject beneath our skins, these can symbolize offense. And defense is something that I want to prevent becoming ill. So I recognize the various risks that I'm faced with. Obviously, everybody's got a risk heat map, for example. Let's just imagine that in different ages in our lives, there are certain risk hotspots which are defined fundamentally by our genetics, and we can actually identify these hotspots. And if we manage to circumvent these hotspots, that will add quite a lot to our survival. So many people say that you can actually prevent tumors by having a heart attack, so that's not particularly good. So what is really important is that we have to pay attention to both of these dimensions, that is offense and defense. I actually toured the world. I visited Switzerland, I went to Saudi Arabia, Dubai, South America. I attended various conferences, and what I see is that there are lots of technological pieces of achievements that can actually help us get a better lifestyle, but they are aimed at putting my body into a state that people had in the 19th century. And we have intermittent fasting, which is not something novel, not something new. This is the way people actually live for tens of thousands of years. So obviously my grandparents, for example, didn't eat after 6 p.m. They just closed the door of the fridge and that's it. The mindset was completely different. Or looking at your chronotype, for example, and I did it for myself, whether I'm a night owl or a very early morning person. So this concept that you actually adjust your daily routine to the sun is now being explained by lots of different facts like melatonin and stuff like that. And you know, earlier you just went to bed because it was dark, and you got up because the sun got up. And we sort of put concepts behind things that are very, very simple. And obviously, sometimes we need to be hungry, sometimes we need to be cold, and we have to adjust to these circumstances.
Yes, but for example, the conference Rozina visited, where biohackers came together, and basically pirates, number of biopirates per square meter was more than 500. So they did advance in this area. So it's not like it's not an advancing. It's finding our way again, because I think we've drifted away very distantly from a normal agenda. So now we find our way back, or maybe we are getting more conscious towards something that actually worked back in the days, and now we know how to do it. Well, maybe that's true, but there's another side of this coin, as Brian says also, if he's asked, that this can actually get wrong on the wrong path. So when he started to use human growth hormones, injecting himself for weeks, the object was to get younger, and the measurement actually showed that he got younger by 7 years. But in the meantime, his blood pressure was rapidly growing, and this whole blood sugar level was also in a bad shape. So there are some bad consequences of all of that. So while Brian Johnson acts and take a lot of steps in order for his skins to get younger, I just watched a video the other day, and he actually injected fat into his face. So, well, who would like to try that out? You can raise your hands.
But do you think that an 18-year-old male would have such beautiful skin? Well, I wouldn't like to have my skin.
Especially if you have wrinkles as a teenager.
Let me call attention to a very interesting point that Rozina pointed out. A lot of people who are trying to find simple solutions. So what they are expecting is that, okay, I'm going to toss this pill, and then I don't have to run, I don't have to jog, I don't have to eat in a normal way, and if I take resveratrol, it is going to make me younger, and then I don't need that. So I do not have to exert any effort. There are different studies about it, but I would say that 70 to 80% of your health and of extending your health is these health awareness things, what we are doing in every day, and then whether you are going to regular screenings or stuff. But diet is another thing. It's more complex because there are no two people whose diet would have to be the same. So if you did 80%, and if you also want to add the 20%, and you have a lot of money, say $2 million per year, then you can go and check your genetic risk factors. You can check your microbiome, your metabolomics, and then you fit your dietary habits to that. And if you also want to aim at the remaining few percent, then you can also start taking supplements that the biohackers use. But it is actually the top,
that's just the top of it.
The very top. But it is only worthwhile dealing with if all the other parts are okay. There are a lot of people taking a lot of pills, me included, but you know the issue is with the purity of the ingredients. So whether what is in these pills is really what features on the label, and actually what extends the life of rats. It's a translational thing. It does not necessarily extend the lifespan of human beings. But if you take 8 different things at the same time, what correlations they are going to have with each other? No experiments have ever been done.
Definitely, I'm very excited what kind of things you saw at this conference, because I think what were the most shocking or most state-of-the-art things? Well, I saw a magnetic light therapy vibrational flow state measure. I can't explain scientifically what exactly happened back then, but it measured my flow state, which was 99% at the beginning, and then I had to carry out a test with the help of a pad, which actually ruined my percentage of flow to 60%. So I think there are some things which is only experimental, but about this red light therapy, which would actually we would get with the sunset and sunrise, but we don't go to bed at sunset, for example, and don't wake up with the sun. I bought such red light hacking device, and I sometimes have some problems with my back, with my liver. It's normally it's just a psychosomatic problem, but I do use these therapeutic tools, and I feel better actually by using this red light therapy. Look at her face; they are a bit shocked.
You know, that you are not catching anything, but wow, what a beautiful things you have.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so the more expensive it is, the better it is.
Red light therapy device was what I brought home, and the other thing which I very much like is the mushrooms, adaptogenic mushrooms, which I've been a fan of for years. Before exercising, they help them absorb absorb oxygen a little bit better, and for me it works actually, and it's only because I think it works, it still does. So these things I very much like. I told you that if you feel better, then of course it's good, then you should use it. I usually say in connection with these devices, but there are not always some clinical experiments behind them. It's not proven, but still it can work. I usually don't use a skin cream on my face, which is not clinically tested, but if you like it, it's just like hugging trees. If you feel better, then of course you should do that. Again, you are nodding.
Yeah, you know, embracing a tree has less risks.
Lágítod a hasad, hát ez is...
Yeah.
But do these mushrooms have any risks?
You know, the problem is...
You think?
So let's say that there is a mushroom, and if you find a randomized placebo-controlled study that the use of this particular mushroom improved cognitive capability, okay, so let's take that in this dose. Now, a tomato has 400 bioactive ingredients, but we have been eating it for generations. Now you start taking a mushroom that would also have 400 or 500 bioactive ingredients, but it can well be that there are 10 that are not standardized, that are not featuring on the label, not controlled, and their effects have never been assessed. So what is really interesting here is that we are treating them as if they were food, okay, growing in nature. Okay, so nothing untoward, nothing ugly thing would grow in nature. But yes, I'm sorry to say, but there are very ugly things in nature, and the composition of that is changing all the time. Now, if you start taking a lesson on herb or mushroom, imagine as if you were sweeping all the pills together in the evening, and then took all of them at the same time. Yeah, there is camomile in it and whatever.
I'm just imagining a shield of mushrooms, and this is some kind of a vibrating tool that helps you calm down.
So, but let me point something else out. So we don't know what ingredients it would have. It has never been tested by placebo-controlled studies. The other point is that we are not the same. Our metabolisms are not the same, different. We are reacting to drugs different ways, different doses have to be taken by people. We are reacting to food in a different way. So there are people who get drunk on 1 mug of beer, while others who take 10 vodkas and are still walking away. It can well be that this is not toxic for me, but it can be toxic for other people.
This is why it's good that technology is here to help us, and we can look inside our bodies very deeply. The microbiome is something that we are learning now. I'm sure you know more about it than us, but I think most of us know about this from a Netflix series by Julie Anders, who is a German researcher and doctor who wrote a book called Gut. And we cannot avoid talking about the microbiome, so let's hear a summary about what it is.
So the microbiome is the collection of all microbes in and on us, and 99% of these microbes live in our guts. So when you look at us, like, we are one planet, there's these like grasslands and cities, and then the gut is the huge, crazy rainforest with all the things happening.
And why is it so important for our health?
The microbiome is so important for our health because it is such a central point where it's in contact with our immune cells, which reside in the gut. It also is the quality of the foods we eat. It influences how our gut will absorb other nutrients, and also it creates some vitamins on its own and influences the nervous system through the connection to the brain. So it really is at a central place, and it does a few very central things.
We are different, our microbiomes are different, and we can do a lot to teach the things inside us, to change our microbiomes, to modify it a little bit. To what extent do you think that it's a scientific breakthrough that it has been put into center in the last few years, the state of the microbiome?
Well, I do believe that microbiome research is right at its very beginnings yet. So the number of publications has increased exponentially in the past few years, and there are hundreds of companies that are developing microbiome-based therapies, but neither of them are available on the market. And if we are trying to find the cause-effect science of why particular diseases have particular microbiome factors, it is not known. So we have to have a look at it, but together with some other considerations, and alopecia, whatever.
Helps with everything.
People claim that microbiome involves in everything. There are much more bacilli living in us than human beings on the planet. And I do believe that this is going to be a very important tool of diagnostics and also medicine in the future. But we will be looking forward to great development later on. You know, this is a disturbing question. I've been dealing with microbiome research for years, just like microbiome therapy, and we are in a kind of an information crisis. 30, 40 years ago, there wasn't enough information available. It was difficult to collect information about the patients. And now, new processes offer us an unbelievable amount of information about the gut biome. The point is that we do not see the big picture. So imagine that there are thousands of different microbes that are all having their place and their role in this system, and they are not following a mechanistic logic. So I mean, so let's say an animal or a community of animals walking around on the savannah, you see a hyena. You cannot analyze it in itself. So if a hyena can behave this way or that way, positive or negative, but at the same time, there are different kinds, different species of predators that are also predating upon each other. So there are a huge number of interrelations. But how does a man think? Well, that's, oh, wow, it's too much information, but let's try to find some safe points and then let's push down some stakes. There are microbiomes that we know that's very good that they are there. There are some that we are very, very, very much afraid of. There are some others that look great in a particular dietary pattern, and then you look at that and you say that the person is eating a lot of fat or something, or whether it is protein or not. Yeah, you see whether the person is doing athletics or not, and you also have a look at the person. You see that it doesn't feel well. Depression people have typical patterns. My colleagues are always asking that when I'm talking about autoimmune diseases, I should specifically talk about the microbiome. The Hashimoto will not disappear, but the condition of the person will improve, will greatly improve. So there are a lot of points where we can intervene. What really disturbs me is that the new information is published so fast. I don't know whether you know that last year our genetic knowledge was doubled in every 70 days. In case of microbiomes, the pace is even higher because we didn't know too much about the microbiome earlier. And to tell the truth, there aren't a lot of good articles about the microbiome. It's difficult to grab the topic because you are either focusing on 2 or 3 bacteria, or then you are not focusing on all of them. But if you're focusing on all of them, you cannot go into the details. So this is a topic that is not thematized for the human brain yet, and this is what we are searching. And should you have any ideas, please send me an SMS that what kind of a solution we would need.
Someone to analyze.
Yeah, so this is typically an area that the human brain will not be able to encompass in itself. So this network, the way of how the gut biome operates, this unbelievably wide cooperation between different bacteria, viruses, and mushrooms or fungi, and at the same time the genetics of the host organization also has an effect on biome. So there are too many interrelations. for putting into scientific articles. So we need another quantum jump of technology.
If we can look inside this folder. I am sitting here as a good student because I have carried out many changes in my lifestyle. So I'm very curious about the results of my control test. So there was a baseline where we set out after a test we set out the basics, and what it was determined what Rozina can change to also change the microbiome a little bit and teach you a few things. And now, Ernő, you are holding the results. It's a very fresh test, and now we can see if there has been changes in the microbiome based on what Rozina changed in
in case of Rozina, we were in a really fortunate situation because we were not only doing microbiome, but complete geosequencing as well as metabolomics. So
we do not understand these terms anymore.
And it helped us to put together individual advices. And I'm happy to see that you were following these advices because we can see positive changes. But prior to going into the changes, let me tell you that, number one, I would not have the right to hand it over to you because a physician and a dietitian would have to do that.
This is going to happen, obviously.
Okay, there's just a disclaimer, so there is going to be an official handover ceremony, if you like. So Rozina does not know what is hiding here.
So let's only talk about the information that is public for Rozina, whether she lets out gas, it's maybe not public. I don't mind sharing it.
Tell you that we have a written approval from Rozina. So Rozina, now I'm asking you.
It will cost extra, but let's do it.
Okay, so as long as I don't have to pay for it, okay. Good. So without enlisting a huge number of names of bacilli, we are also doing AI for analysis, but the microbiologist and the physician is still needed to put the big picture together. The most important thing, one that is the easiest to understand, that if we only wanted to measure the health of the microbiome with one factor, this is diversity. So how diverse that community is and whether there are different microorganisms, viruses, fungus, bacilluses, whatever, and the more diverse it is, it's okay. And the better the resistance of the body will be, the better the better the body will be protected. And you have improved.
Great.
Congratulations.
Let's clap our hands for my microbiome and for you, because it's thanks to you.
Yeah, so do believe that this was a very important step forward, and we do already see that as you were doing a targeted diet, there were some important species, the presence of which increased, so Akkermansia and Doxa.
Hello.
Congratulations, because I have none of these, but these two are very important from the point of view.
Máté is surprised about this.
Oxalobacter, we can find very few people
very
who do that.
specific question. Do you do stool transplants? Because I can
so
give
what if we
some
discussed
if
it
if somebody doesn't know what we are talking about, in a capsule you can eat someone else's stool. I'm not jealous of it. I can give it to you.
Okay, so work on it a little bit and we can talk about it. And the most important is the leaky gut syndrome, where it is endothelium. The integrity of the endothelium of the gut is upset, and a lot of things get into the circulation, and there are quasi, so to speak, fragments or something that get into the body, and then beget different inflammations, and one of the signs of the aging is that all of these whatever things appear. So the risk of leaky gut syndrome is gone.
Did you have to do big sacrifices? Well, I carried out two big changes. Before the first microbiome test, I knew that there was some problems with milk. I'm lactose intolerant, as I found out later, and I stopped consuming dairy at all, but I didn't start eating fermented foods. And since I had the first microbiome report, based on the dietitian's suggestion, I started consuming fermented foods and also fruit, raspberry, and what is it called that is in the red berries, like raspberry and etc. And so I started eating these foods, and it seems like that they have a good result.
Blackberry, and you took a lot of blackberry,
like
so ate a lot of blackberry.
I ate
but I also
blueberries,
have good risk, because the risk of your
today we are celebrating
liver damage and your sugar risk also went down. But and other recommendation, so insulin resistance and other risks are still there. So you are going to receive a detailed dietetic guide. But let me briefly tell you: green tea, broccoli, almonds, cocoa. These are the things that you should take more, so as to cut down on it. But I'm going to give you a separate discussion.
That's fantastic. This really sounded really positively, and it seems very easy. But what if there are changes that are not so easy to modify? You also did the gene test. You have mentioned it. And we can ask, what if the fault is in our genes? Because we have already touched upon this topic. We have an opening, a message from Jason Silva. Let's see it and later discuss gene therapy.
This issue of gene therapy or CRISPR gene editing is controversial, not so much for the capacity that this will give us to transform the software of biology to make biological repairs to people that suffer from genetic illnesses and so on and so forth. I mean, that people get on board with that fairly quickly. If you can alleviate human suffering by moving some biological software around, people are generally on board. But then they get a little bit scared when they realize the implications are such that we're going to be able to augment ourselves and transform ourselves and potentially speciate. And to that, I say, get ready. Because human beings are creatures of self-expression, and we are creatures that believe that our symbolic self is more essential to who we are than our biological expression. And so today, when people want to radically self-express, they might tattoo themselves or put on all kinds of funky clothing or grow their hair in a certain way or wear some kind of makeup. Increasingly, people are changing their gender. There's all ways in which we can self-modify so that our appearance more accurately reflects our symbolic self or our essential inner life. You could argue that the human story of self-expression is one in which the imagination is summoning its own literalization, where the inner life is summoning its own literalization. So as we get increasingly expert at self-modifying at a genetic level, well, then the human biological canvas is going to be a tabula rasa. We're going to be engendering our own divinity, authoring our own godhood, transfigurating ourselves in the same way that we take on digital avatars in the metaverse. But instead of playing around with ones and zeros in digital code to transfigurate, we'll play with the codes of biology to turn ourselves into our avatar self, so to speak. That's what's coming, so get ready for it.
What do you think? How much time do we have to prepare for this? How realistic is the picture painted by him?
I think we have a lot of time to get prepared.
Is it still far away? Yes, it's still a bit far away. For what we use gene therapies at the moment, and it's really good that they exist, Those are illnesses that were uncurable or only partially curable, so far are in the focus of gene therapy. I'm sure you remember Zente, a little child who had SMA, and the gene therapy cost about 700 million forints. He had spinal muscular atrophy, and now he can walk up the stairs, even though he was not even able to move almost before the therapy. And so Jason Silva is really enthusiastic about the gene therapy as well, and we start thinking, oh wow, we can do so many things. Well, first of all, it's not going to happen in the near future, and it brings up many ethical questions.
It's not only about ethical matters. When people think about gene therapy, they think that I'm going to be tall, I'm going to be blonde, and my nose is going to be smaller. But the problem is that the genetic therapy tools help us assist with patients where the problems impact one particular sequence of the genome. For example, when it comes to colon tumors, if there's one specific mutation, then obviously that's going to impact the body, and fibrous cysts and stuff like that. So if you have very strict pathologies which are very easily identifiable, and you know at childhood that this is going to happen, then you can deal with it. But most of the features of humans is not something that you can actually change immediately. So he wasn't really enthusiastic about the fact that we're going to become superhumans. So all of our attributes are not impacted by just one gene, but a multitude of genes. For example, my height is defined by a great multitude and crescendo of genes. The harmony of them actually defines what my height is going to be. And obviously, there are a number of other different factors. For example, my diet, the way I live, and so on and so forth. So we're not going to be able to pinpoint one single gene that's going to help us stop our height at 184 centimeters. And I do agree with that. There are lots of different attributes which are actually hereditary, and the polygenic modifications we're not going to be able to tap into in the immediate future, but I would like to debate you how fast away it is, so we can actually see the pace of technological development. Very new pieces of technologies have been awarded Nobel laureate prizes, and a couple of years back, for example, medicines have already been approved for very novel things, and you can actually help a patient with just one injection for life. So we can see that these are very effective pieces of technologies. We can modify genes from the beginning of 1970s. So things that previously required highly trained professionals and huge pieces of equipment are now being done by small children, primary school children, in simple workshops. So it seems that we have let the genie out of the bottle. And there was an example of somebody getting a $1 million medicine that cost $50 million, and then a biohacking team hacked this particular medication, and then you can actually buy it illegally for $7,000. But then you obviously start thinking about whether you want to buy something that was actually concocted in a garage by the boys. So if you have a genetic disease and illness, you may want to take it, but obviously you need approval and you need to test these things. And exactly because of the things that it's very easy to use and is very effective, I think there's going to be a multitude of illegal experimentations which will bring about a lot of different dangers. For example, people concocting genes and stuff like that on the kitchen counter and stuff like that. And a couple of years back, there was a scandal. Obviously, when we're talking about these therapies, we're speaking about adults who need one specific modification of of one specific gene, but obviously there's a different aspect to it, which is the modification of embryos, where theoretically we could actually be able to sort of eliminate a number of different diseases and illnesses or fix the human genome, and everywhere across the globe is a no-no. This is forbidden, and despite the fact a couple of years ago a Chinese researcher created such a child and he implanted HIV resistance, and he also tampered with some cognitive things, which are very easy to do. You can actually forbid it
in a black market.
Obviously, you can also forbid people to create computer viruses, but you're not going to be able to tell what people in Iran are doing at a military
what
base.
I said, we trust or we hope that we still have time. Yes, I think that with this last thought we could continue the discussion. I'm not so sure. I mean, the people that I talked to in the Silicon Valley called my attention to the fact that we are in this already, but we could still think about different aspects. Unfortunately, we do not have any more time now, but our goal is longevity, so we will have time, luckily, later even to talk with you. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. We will continue with Superhumans, so stay with us.
In 50 years' time, we're going to meet each other here,
that's right.
And at the same time, thank you.
Here we are still at MVM Future Talks, one of the most important scientific online event of Hungary, where we are talking about trends about our future and results of science, but in a very practical and understandable way. Today's Future Talks focuses on longevity and the secret to longevity. In the first part of the discussion, we talked about what can we do in order to that end, where science is at, to what extent is it about money or our own will, and we've also touched upon the early diagnostics and gene therapy, how we can prevent illnesses before they would occur. But what happens when something gets wrong within us? What we cannot replace. How can we use technology, and how can technology assist to us? If we think about it, intertwining of humans and machines, we only heard or learned about through sci-fi movies, books, but recently the topic is getting more widespread, and the reason to this is that this all comes closer and closer to us, those things that we've only seen in movies back in the time. This means that human machines actually are living among us. If we think about the fact that nearly 3 million of our human fellows are living with machines built into their hearts, and we already have prosthesis which we can control at our will, then I think to pose the question is very timely where we at regarding to science, and so superhumans would emerge who have chips embedded in their brains and thus acquiring superhuman skills. And here we at in the studio, so let me ask our audience here in the studio whether you would actually be willing to embed something or build in something, a chip in your brain. Would you do that? Let's have a vote. So a chip into your brain with the help of which you can gain superhuman powers. Here you can see the question. Answer A is yes, B is no, so please push the button now. Very curious about the results. Who would be brave enough to take on such intervention? Who is afraid of the risks? The two results are pretty close to each other. 45% of those who answered say yes, they would be very exciting to gain such superhuman powers, but 55% say that they are a little bit afraid of these technologies. This result, I think, means that science, technology and machines still need something to prove, but there is someone who actually gets deeper and dived deeper into the topic, who is no one else but Gergely, Szirmai.
The transhuman cyberpunk universe's most important player is the cyborg, the merger of humans and machines in one body. This technology has already become part and parcel of our present days. Come with me and have a taste into the cyborg future. Yes, we have 86 billion neurons. They have thousands of inputs and outputs going in and outside, and within 1,000th of a second, this extremely complex system results in us talking to one another here. We have 50 patients who are actually carrying these interfaces, and it's quite apparent that this could actually be scaled in a couple of years' time to a great extent.
Hi, Gergely.
Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am here already. Hi.
Are you 100% human being? I'm just looking at you whether until you
really.
were diving into
I was
this
thinking
topic.
about my left hand,
Something has
maybe
changed
letting
on
it
you,
go
huh?
because it's not really something of use, but I still
Are
hold
you
on to it.
afraid? Did you get shocked from what you've experienced during
No,
your
I was
little
really
research?
enthusiastic about it. So I was watching about this little study and poll, and
You would
I
go
was
with it.
actually really enthusiastic about it. I'm really open to it. Obviously, there are some logical levels to it. So, for example, I would really want to carry my healthcare data in my arm, so that when I fall off my skateboard, then
Well,
obviously the
dogs,
ambulance just
sorry
needs to
for the
read it.
Parallel, but our dogs are actually embedded with this and built in with these chips.
Yes, right.
Should they accidentally get lost? Maybe it's silly example,
Yeah,
but it works.
you're right, absolutely. And obviously, there's a great deal of fear that stems from this. Just we fear that our dog gets away, but people are quite afraid of it, that if somebody puts a chip into me, then I won't be able to get away, and everybody's going to be able to monitor everything I do. And this is the same way, despite the fact that the chips in our mobile phones are outside of our skin. But I think that these type of changes are just
do you have any question,
1 inch away.
Let me put that this way. What are the questions that you would like to clarify at this Future Talks today?
Fundamentally speaking, we shot a really comprehensive documentary, and I got an answer to many things, but I'm very curious about the next step. We dreamt about many things. We started groping around the future, but I want to see the next step.
But if you dove deep really into this topic, you can actually share your experiences with us, but we will be joined by a couple of other experts today. Let's meet by the first one.
David Orban, founding CEO of Actioneer, former president of Humanity Plus, the World Transhumanist Alliance, and one of the first people to implant an NFC chip into his hand. He believes that the key to longevity lies in the convergence of biotechnology, artificial intelligence, and breakthroughs in social adaptation.
Hello.
Hi.
Köszöntünk sok szeretettel.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Can we see where you have your chip?
Inside my hand.
In your hand, somewhere there.
It's
just
like
a small,
1 grain of rice.
a very tiny thing.
It's very inconvenient to take it out. Obviously, you can switch your mobile phones, but this is not going to be
Very good, but on a daily basis you can't actually feel it, right?
No,
or
I
you usually don't touch it, right?
No, I can't lose it.
Very good.
Just a question. Which type of chip do you have it in? The freely programmable?
Here we go.
That's the coolest one.
We will talk about it in more detail. We have our next expert arriving.
Dr. István Ulbert, Institute Director, Professor. He believes in conservative approach, that a long quality life requires a lot of exercise, brain exercise, a healthy diet, and regular checkups.
István, köszöntünk.
István, Thank you for coming. Welcome. I still immediately feel, or I already feel this kind of contradiction, but we'll talk about it, artificial intelligence, tools of science and using them, and traditional ways, because you believe rather in that, István, what can provide us with longevity.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
See, we have a third expert.
György Lévai, project leader at Széchenyi István University, research leader at Infinite Biomedical Technologies. He specializes in extending the capabilities of the human body. He believes that the download your brain into a machine narrative is still a long way off, and that, for that, we need to understand how brain works.
Hi, Yuri.
Hello, everybody.
Among us. You have the third chair, and now we have a group of experts where I can just lean back and listen to you and try to absorb those many pieces of information that you can share with us. But if I want to make it a bit more understandable, Yuri, please help us understand that contrary to the old traditional devices, to what extent is it more what you're developing?
Well, in terms of how they know more, needs to be broken down into two things. Obviously, there's the technological perspective. It's got engines in it, batteries in it. You can actually control it through biological and physiological signs. In terms of functionality, it doesn't know anything more. It knows a bit less. So, functionally speaking, it actually, the most that prosthetics can actually give you were the ones that were created at the beginning of the 1900s. There are a lot of different interesting things about it, but the old prosthetics are actually controlled by cables. And if I move my back, for example, I extend my shoulder blades, that's going to pull on a cord, a cable, and that's going to open a hook. That's a classical old-style prosthetics, and the tension of this cable will give me a feeling of how much a prosthetics is open. So this mechanical system gives you a very accurate sense of how everything works, and the neurophysiological part of it is not understood by us at all. We are very far away from the new prosthetics catching up with what is ingrained into our biological system very deeply.
Our brain is an incredibly complicated system. I wouldn't undertake to go into more depth. István, in the focus of your research, you have this actually to understand this part of ours and to hack that part.
Yes, accurately, very exactly. This is what we are actually conducting research upon, and we don't really know the brain. But obviously we have the tools that's going to allow us to understand it much more fundamentally. And besides understanding the brain, we're also developing methods to try and approximate a better understanding of the brain. Multitudes of tools, like electrophysiological tools. We put a chip into the brains of humans. Then there are much more sophisticated ones when we implant molecules into the heads of humans, the attributes of which we can actually sort of map out from the outside, or we build molecules into the heads of humans or animals, the manipulation of which can be done through light from the outside, and this is how we can actually impact the functioning of our brain.
The aim of the future of all this is that maybe we will have more developed skills acquired by having these chips inbuilt in our brain?
It's not really the case. Currently, we're at a stage where we try to sort of replace functions that we lose or that are lost. There's one lost function that for 50 years now we've been able to replace, which is hearing. The very first implant was given to humans in the 1970s, and ever since millions of people have already started using it, and the results are actually quite beautiful, quite impressive, but this is it. So this is how far we've come, because we tried this very same thing with visual implants. Obviously, there are new implants which managed to get to a stage where they actually implanted it into humans, but unfortunately, up to this very day, are not accessible on the market. You can't buy them. Obviously, there's numerous reasons to it. Vision is much more complex than hearing, and if we make a jump to thinking, then obviously there are a great multitude of complications coming in.
Well, we only are scratching the surface of the topic. We haven't even talked about the goal of all this, which is improving our way of living or our skills, developing our skills or making our life longer, and what kind of social or any kind of effect it would have on our society, or if we inbuild anything in our physiques, how that impacts the whole of society. So there are some more questions to it as well, and we would like to talk about that with David. But before that, we will see Jason Silva's thoughts, who, as an external expert, is talking to us. So let's have his opinion.
One of the consequences of radical life extension is definitely that society is going to have to be transformed in all kinds of ways. I mean, people worry about what's going to happen to the nature of how we live and work, and what's going to happen to how we organize ourselves. And you know, to that, I just kind of look to the past. I mean, there's been technological revolutions that have already like upended how we structure ourselves and organize ourselves and fill our time. One great example is that 100 years ago, I think like 90% of the jobs were farm-related. Today, that's less than 1%. And of course, farmers have so much more yield than they ever did in the past. And now people worry about artificial intelligence increasingly taking over traditional jobs for us, and so on and so forth. And yes, I have no doubt that we'll probably offload many things to our digital gods as we increasingly create sand that thinks. But, you know, others talk about population collapse across many nations. We're not reproducing at the same rate. And so in some ways, it might actually be a good thing that we have radical life extensions.
What do you think, David?
Tulajdonképpen nem lesz holnap közöttünk valaki, aki 200
There is not going to be anybody who would live for 200 years just next day. It will take time. If we manage to extend our lifespan, we will see what it actually will mean. But it would be worthwhile to come to an agreement on whether it is theoretically possible and whether it is worthwhile to invest in it to achieve this objective. There has to be a social contract that needs to be changed, and this is going to change, not only from a biological point of view, but also because of AI and the humanoid robots. When one does not have to fight for the living on basis of their monthly salary, people will come to the point when they ask what the objective, what the goal of their life is, how they can design a dignified life.
Can it occur that everything is so reorganized that practically we don't even, or this won't be our primarily
what
aim
I'm focusing on, and what you're actually focusing on as well every day, is something that would have sounded ridiculous had somebody called it to
still,
work.
well,
You know,
people a lot of times tell that
yes,
to me.
exactly.
Is it a job that you're doing?
And okay, so it cannot be that this is also fun for us, and it gives a goal in our life. And this is a great fortune. It has never.
That doesn't necessarily is depending or correlated to how humans are.
Certain strata in society, children, old people, family members, who are not working, who are studying, making other people's lives better by way of their love they show. So there already are examples of how the society can accommodate itself to having more and more people living like this. So
it might be the future that robots will do and replace us in our job, or within a period of 5 minutes we can actually take care of the given task with the help of the chip inbuilt our brain. Can that be the near future? And Gergely, I'm also looking at you because you are very familiar with the skiffy word that we can only see movies, and now we have a taste of that. But is that reality and movie word is now getting closer together? Is that becoming our reality?
Oh, yes, it does. When we consider film production, let me tell you that the number of jobs to be filled in film production massively decreased because there are a lot of technological improvements that nobody is going to cut the sound in the next course of the film. No, because it will be done. When I was a child, I was physically cutting sound and I was fitting the interviews together. So this profession will probably not be needed. So, cutting the number of jobs by half or by 75% as a result of IT developments, this is something that is already going on.
Yes, but those who did it back in a time, or who had that as a job, they have to find a new mission for their lives, and that brings us back to the question how society can react to all that and reorganize itself.
Let me cite an example. I have a car repair mechanic, a great friend of mine. He loves doing it, and he would not be able to live without it. He is already approaching the end of his life, but we need people who are in love with their profession. And if we have people like this, we solve this issue. So a work will not be considered as a burden. For me, working is joy, and I know a lot of people, waiters, waitresses, car repair mechanics, who find joy in their work, and this in itself is already a great step forward, decreases stress factors and extending lifespan. This is, you know, I love doing what I do, but I'm also like a clown, you know. I never worked in real life. If we understand work in a classical meaning of the word, this is very good, but I do not think that we will be able to find enough people within a society who would be in love with
the question is whether there will be any human being who would pay for that book, because we have software doing it for us.
The objective is not. It's not that everybody should lose their job. Yeah, so automation. For example, is going to decrease the number of carpenters. There already are companies that are selling products in a DIY way, and so they buy the plaques and they only fit it. But you know, when we need customized products, we are going to invite a carpenter to come and work for us. And it can well be that automation is going to replace a large number of jobs, but will make it available to wide scopes, to wide straight for society, but doesn't mean that human work is going to stop existing. And this is very important to understand in connection with AI, that we are still worlds away from making these systems produce new things. These systems are capable of filtering the existing information, presenting existing information, or combining existing information better. And what they are doing is a useful thing, but they will not be able to produce new things. So this is why we are not going to exchange arts, scientific thinking for AI. So AI is not going to replace it for a long while. But let me go further. The truth is that one is not always predestined to do one thing throughout his own life. It can well be that a person can work as a neuroscientist or carpenter or whatever.
I would just like to steer the conversation back a little bit. Now we're looking at technology and how the combination of human and machine can help us to live longer. And from that point of view, also in your movie, there was a very interesting part that we will peek into now, an insight into the future that we have seen in movies, implants, chips, etc. And we will continue discussing this after the clip.
I'm very surprised that people are still concerned about having a chip in them versus everything else they're willing to carry around on them all the time. My bigger concern than that is that when this does and will go global. This becomes a replacement form of your passport, a replacement form of your ID, a replacement form of your medical data, your criminal record, your benefits, your family history, like everything is in one big database, right? Makes it easier, right? When somebody needs to access these records, say you're applying for a job and they want all of your information, there's like one big global database of all this stuff.
Oh.
So what happens then when this becomes everything that you are is in this chip? So we basically have a socialist issue that's going to approach in terms of this becoming like a class issue. You're going to see like, okay, well, you haven't met the standards this month, you're not achieving enough, your social status isn't high enough. This chip can no longer access hospitals, it can't access transport, it can't access, you're not allowed this job anymore, your clearance isn't high enough.
So they could like disable the part of your chip's functionality and you cannot take the bus? That's scary. But it won't happen, don't worry, guys.
This isn't the one you've got to worry about. Like, worry about this in 20 years' time when it becomes mandatory and they're chipping babies at birth and that becomes your ID from the start. There was a time when you were just born and you could just live and you could just be. Now you come with paperwork. Everyone is born with a birth certificate. Right. It's not that big a leap with how we've digitized everything else that we have paperwork at birth. At what point does that become microchip at birth?
Just a very brief reaction from everyone. Please, David, first of all, because you have a chip in your hand.
Our responsibility is to prevent such a state of affairs so that there should not be such a dystopic future ahead of us. But I'm optimistic. Technology is going to have a positive end result. Technology has been helping us for thousands of years, and this is going to accelerate our opportunities for adaptation for future society so that we would also be able to change the way of our society changes.
So it is going to help us. If just summarize both things, if we do this. István, what do you think?
I do not see that it would be feasible technologically because we would have to intervene in numerous life functions.
Having our data registered
I'm already having it in my pocket.
That doesn't matter where it is.
It doesn't matter whether it's in or out.
The question is rather that this would be a huge collective database. And for me, this is quite
scary. But this is a political
honestly.
matter. This is a political matter. This is already practiced in China, far as I understand. There already are factories where these headbands or TG tools are used, and this is how they are watching and checking the way of how the production sector works. So from this point onwards, this is not a matter of scientists. And the same is also happening in the US, because if your credit rating is not high enough, you won't be able to buy a house, for example. This is going to happen as time goes on. And we already had the example before that 100 years ago, 90% of all the workers were employed in agriculture. Now it dropped to 1%, and not from one day to another. So these are processes, and during the course of these processes, adaptation to the change of the system will occur. And the fact that there is going to be a chip that can be implanted and that would be able to have constant communication with the central server by way of a network. We are not so far away from that technologically, but we are not going to get to here from one day to another. No, this is going to be, well, these are going to be processes lasting for decades. During the course of which the system will have to be regularly reshuffled, reshaped. And this is also going to happen in all kinds of fields. So when we are going to exchange our cars for self-driving cars, 20 years ago the idea was that, oh my God, from one day to another all of our cars are going to be self-driving. But now we came to the point when we cannot change lanes.
But is it for sure that it's going to follow this phase? What if from one day to another we will have a ton of robots?
If we can do that, they are going to proliferate, but we won't be able to do it. So when we are talking about these things, it's always the end result that we are focusing on, the end result of the process, but the process itself will take much longer than what we would imagine it would last.
But David, you are saying that in 20, 30 years there will be 1 billion robots among us.
Well, not that there are going to be 1 billion robots, but the annual production level will be 1 billion robots per annum, not in 20 or 30 years' time, but there are already plans that this is going to happen in 10 to 15 years' time. It doesn't matter whether it's 10 or 30 years. If you take the history of England, the outcome of industrialization begat, for example, Dickens' novels. Living conditions were terrible in England, and there were millions to die of hunger in Ireland. Now, our responsibility is to prevent that and to see what is happening, what is coming out of technology. And it can well be that you can be enthusiastic about technology without being blind to its dangers. Yes, so when technology is changed, this issue is always coming to the fore. When, for example, when we consider e-vehicles, 20 years ago or even 10 years ago, we were told that we are going to have so many vehicles, but in no way the percentage of newly purchased cars is electronic, but at the same time electric, but at the same time we can also say that it's dropping in Europe. And it is not going to be exponential, but this is an exponential, no, infrastructure. So Europe cannot afford itself that Volkswagen and other companies would go bankrupt because they are not able to produce profitable e-cars. But they would not be able to do that, not even in the US. So they would be able to produce the vehicles, they have the infrastructure for that. But what I referred to previously was that the infrastructure background demands a huge amount of work, so we do not have an electricity infrastructure in Europe available. This is all right, but let's not expect that it is going to happen in 5 years' time.
Okay, so you think that there is a healthy pace in this thing, so many things have to change at the same time, that it cannot be so radically rapid.
And when we are talking about implanting a chip into our head that would fulfill a particular function, okay, we can do that for a short while. And there already are clinical trials being run where chips were implanted into the brains of human beings. But there are so many issues to be solved scientifically. For example, the lifespan of these chips, because the body is going to jettison, to eject these chips. So there still are limits because of which this kind of symbiosis of human-machine will not be realized in short term.
Can it be even 100 years, in your opinion? Gergely, you also want to learn about the next steps. That's what he's most interested in. In your areas, István and Gyuri mainly, where are you at the moment? Which is the next big step that you feel like is going to happen within a few years, realistically?
When it comes to the development of prosthetics, obviously everybody would like to have these if somebody's extremities are amputated. They want to put their prosthetics on and they want it to move similarly to human limbs. But within the peripheral neurological system, 90% of the information goes upwards and only 10% of it goes downwards, that is used for controlling our body. The rest, 90%, is going upwards. And we know nothing about this 90%, how it's being generated, how it's being processed by the brain. And from the 10%, which is directed towards controlling the body, only a fragment of it has been regenerated and mimicked. And so this is the next step, this is the next big jump that we want to take, which in concrete terms means that we can actually collect data on the surface of the skin from muscle movements, and where the muscles are connected to the various neurons, we can actually measure what sort of information is passed on, and this is how we can actually build more accurate controlling systems. So this is what the next 5 years are going to be about, not about making prosthetics very similar to human limbs. This is an incremental process, a slow process, so to say, and where we currently stand at and where social media suggest we should be, there's a very deep gap between these two stages, and in order for us to be able to jump this gap,
we need decades.
Would require the complete overhaul of technological systems. Globally speaking, the current technological system is simply not fit for us to make big scientific discoveries, because you need to keep publishing things, you need to keep thinking in terms of tenders in 3 to 5 years, and this is insufficient time for us to be able to answer questions of how our brain actually manages and breaks down and regenerates certain electric signals.
I was not really good in PE, but in the PE lessons, but
well,
I was not very good.
I
cannot get a prosthesis that will help me jump up 100 meters high. Maybe
yes, I think this is very far away.
And István, what is your opinion?
We are actually dealing with the 90% that Jury and his teams are not dealing with, and we need to be aware of the fact that decades are going to pass until prosthetics can be implanted into a brain, and we'll get to a level where a wide range of people are going to use it, and through the use of it we can gather information that makes sense. These implants were first put into people 25 years ago, and by now we've come to a stage where there are 4 to 5 research groups which can be put into people's brains, maybe for 10 minutes during neurological surgeries, and during this particular time they can collect a lot of information about neurological cells. So our 5-year plan is that by the end of the next 5 years we should be able to create such a system which is working solidly in a stable manner.
So not yet that
all of this is very complicated. It's very hard to deal with. We need to stabilize it. There's a lot of engineering job and work that needs to be done by people dealing with biology needs to take a look at it. We need to make sense of brain signals. These are incremental small steps that are built upon one another, but I don't see a sudden revolution that may come about. I would like to also add that Leonardo da Vinci 500 years ago already dreamt about helicopters and designed helicopters and aircraft. And a couple of months before, the Wright brothers indeed could prove that it's possible to fly with aircraft. The New York Times had published articles that humans are never going to fly.
So, David, you are saying that maybe this is just a skeptical viewpoint, and there will be a breakthrough.
This is why I'm saying that from a theoretical perspective, it's very important for us to have an agreement about the fact that we need to solve these problems, and indeed, we need to make concerted effort to go ahead, to move ahead, to work towards these goals.
Gergely, you have already had a sci-fi experience when you tried to use your brain to control things. How difficult was it?
Well, I was very bad at it, without any doubt. So, somebody who's struggling with ADHD, it's very hard to focus the muscular system, musculoskeletal system. But what I really think about is that I did feel that it could become very natural, it could become second nature. So this sort of extension of the human body, for me, definitely became possible. I can imagine it happening, thus acquiring extra functions, and I do agree with the fact that the entertainment use of it is really back there. First of all, obviously, we have to start using these pieces of technologies in healthcare, in the military, and when it trickles down to us, that's when we're going to be able to play around with it and experiment with it. But it was really good to do this. There was potential in it. It was joyous to see. I was delighted by it, and obviously the opportunity is really amazing. But we're not at a stage where you can do huge, impressive things by going there once and trying it, but it was really a source of inspiration.
Great, István. If we are talking here in Future Talks about these topics, we have to mention Elon Musk. What do you think about Neuralink and his own vision?
So Neuralink is a company.
Yes.
This is an industrial enterprise of Elon Musk, and what he's really good at is marketing. Obviously,
is it a bluff?
You can't compete with him when it comes to marketing, because he was made by marketing. The richest person of the world. Researchers cannot compete with him. He handpicked those 15 researchers who were able to do it, and they needed to discharge a very specific task, namely to integrate electrodes, minute electrodes, into the human brain. And they need to do it under surgical circumstances so that this implant can actually stay in the human body for several weeks, maybe. And he managed to get his hands on the right people to do that. And they managed to do it. But we don't see fundamental headway in this process. There's also a very similar project which, with very similar electrodes, has been doing similar trials for 10 years. Elon Musk became the third or fourth person who's doing it, but in a very focused manner, and he's very much focused on the things that he would like to achieve. And he's very much ahead of everybody because he knows exactly what he would like to attain. But he's also lagging behind from the perspective that he's a hammer, where he only sees nails and he tries to drive them into the surface. And he only thinks about the single use of a certain methodology. But if you want to transfer thoughts from one human to another, then we need to monitor their activities at the level of 10 million or billion cells. So in this particular case, that particular electrode that we would need to measure it accurately would actually crush the humans beneath them. So he discovered a very good methodology and he built a very good marketing strategy around it. Obviously we can take it seriously from a scientific perspective, but he's very one-sided. He doesn't want to walk above the clouds. He wants to perfect his rocket. He tried to perfect this particular project, and he seems to be succeeding in this, and we'll see how he's going to manage the solution of other biological related problems.
Knowing all of this, I would like to ask a question again that we asked at the beginning of our discussion. Would you have a chip implanted into your brains to have some kind of superpower? Here you can vote yes or no again. Please press the right number button now, yes or no. And I don't know if you followed the results before. 45% said yes in the first round, and 55% was skeptical about this question. Let's see how this result has changed. Wow, I think it has changed, so I think some people got interested in this topic.
40-something% and now 50-something%. This is extremely high, yes, I do agree with it. But, by the way, I would like to join in on the group of 15 or 16 people who already had these chips built into their own bodies and control their wheelchairs with it. So when it comes to raising the question, obviously it was formulated in a way that it's going to give you new abilities. For example, you will remember everything that you want to. Then obviously 80% of the people definitely want it. So the potential that lies behind it is something that you have to specifically.
But we asked the very same question before the conversation. So I think we are becoming more and more open to superhumans appearing among us. As we could hear in this conversation, it's not going to happen in a short time. We don't have to look forward to them in the near future. But Jason Silva also had a few thoughts about this. Let's see this, and then we will talk about superhumans.
You know, the idea that some humans will be augmented and others won't, and that this will create some divide where those that are not augmented cannot compete. I mean, that's a fair inquiry. It's a fair argument. But, you know, I think the people that choose not to be augmented will fall in line with the very same people who choose not to extend their lives, right? And so what will simply happen is they'll just die out. Simple as that. I mean, it's like you don't want to augment and you also don't want radical life extension. Okay, well then let nature run its course. You know, just grow old and die, right? Just deteriorate and disappear. You know, move out of the way and let the rest of us sing the songs that orchestrate the universe, right? Like, you don't want to participate in the game of the millennium? Man, well, that sucks for you. But I do think everybody will have the option. And those that choose not to opt in, to me, are the equivalent of, let's say, a primitive culture refusing vaccines for their children because they choose to go to the witch doctor instead, and having child mortality rates that are unacceptably high. Like, humans are quite stubborn, right? And they don't like to change their beliefs even if the evidence contradicts them. And so those that choose to stay Paleolithic, let them stay Paleolithic. I think entropy will do its thing and they'll disappear.
Jason Silva has a very unique opinion, but we also talked about another expert.
And what's going to happen you're going to create humans, Homo sapiens 2.0, 3.0, and then there's going to be people on this planet who are like, this is the wrong use of technology. This is wrong, ethically wrong. Maybe there's a religious reason, maybe there's a fear reason, but they will not change themselves. So what do you think is going to happen to the, yeah? And what do you think is going to happen when they try to wage some kind of conflict?
A war between species.
And who's going to win?
The higher speciated species with the augmented strength and reality.
And intelligence. You can also augment intelligence. Or that the genie's out of the bottle for everything. You will never put it back in. So what you can do is regulate its ethical use and its application to the general public. So, for instance, what we care about is not that the brain can be read from or written to with very high fidelity, but it's that the consent is there, the awareness.
And so, you know, someone like Elon Musk is suggesting that within 10 years, we could have millions of people who are augmented humans with things like Neuralink. We could be augmented with other forms of biotechnology. So we're at this cusp where humans are going to have to make a decision individually. Like, in our lifetime, we're going to have an opportunity. Do you want to merge with technology, and how much?
But isn't that speciation, if there is a word like that?
Yeah, it is. We're entering an era where we're going to have to sort of analyze, what does it mean to be human? Are these people non-humans? Are they augmented humans? Are they, Harari calls it Homo Deus. He says, like, so we went from, you know, Homo erectus, the Homo sapiens, sapiens, and then Homo Deus. This is this next evolution of humans, but it's not through biological evolution, it's through technological evolution.
Well, this is where we will actually take a rough course with this conversation. What approach do you think is closer to your heart?
Well, currently, where we stand is that if you can't read or write, you are not entitled to, or nobody's going to guarantee that you will be able to make a living. And in the future, it may well become possible that you will only be able to organize your life in a valuable way if your opportunity to adjust possibly to a world where AI is going to play a very integral role is based on technology. And if you accept it, if you reject this opportunity, then I don't know how society is going to be able to organize for you to live a life that is
this is what Rozina referred to, that the gap will become wider, probably, and in connection with Jason Silva's thought, whoever is able to would go forward and create the word, and then
it's very cool and very strange
there will be some lagging behind.
that, for example, Europe voted on the fact that those who want to run ahead would not be allowed to do it because AI is being regulated in the EU in a way that if I can't afford to be able to deal with my psychological problems with a human, for example, I could or would pay 30 or 40 euros every single month to do it with an AI psychologist. Now, this opportunity has been banned in Europe.
Well, regulation actually intervenes, and that's again the social contract.
Yes, and in a very different way than it unfolds in the US. What Silva told is, and is not particularly true, that these people are going to die out and Hugh, but I don't think he was right in terms of the fact that he mentioned that those people who are who opt in, will go ahead and everybody's going to lag behind, but then everybody's going to have the opportunity to decide. I don't think that's going to be an option. The essence of cyberpunk and the dystopian future is that there are humans, ancient humans with godlike machines in their hands. And obviously, we need a moral development, a social, psychological development for us to be able to use these equipment appropriately. I think it's the other way around. I think there's no difference between us and the ancient Romans and Greeks. They had slaves, and we do not have slaves because we are morally at a higher level, but we have the technology that allows us to organize society in a way that it allows us not to have slaves. The smartphone in your pocket is not there because you're a billionaire, but because the creation of 1 billion phones will allow us to buy it at such a low price that everybody's going to possess it. But what we need to add that, statistically speaking, there are more slaves on the globe than ever in history. Yes, because there are 80 billion people living on the globe. Yes, but we've agreed on the fact that it's illegal. But still, some people are doing it across the globe. So I don't think we've sort of departed from this global view. And the fact that an iPhone costs this or that much is not because technology improved in leaps and bounds, but also because many people are working under inhumane circumstances. Children mining cobalt, for example, at places across the globe where we don't want to turn our sights to. And this allows us to pay just this much for an iPhone, which is okay if we accept that this is the way the world is working. And obviously you can replace this stuff with robots, you can replace certain functions with AI, and I don't think there's a possibility for pieces of technologies to be accessible equally to everybody. It's never been done in human history this particular way. At no point in human history everybody managed to put their hands on the pie. And I don't think it was by chance that that it was said by a US citizen, where the consumerist society is everything. So this is the so-called wishful thinking. If we're able to do something, then I will definitely be able to do it and pull it off in the future. And he thinks that this ability is out there, but I don't think it's out there, because he just can't see through all the various biological and technological and scientific problems that's going to help us create this reality. Because first and foremost, this is not what people are going to be dealing with.
What Gergely has mentioned, that of course first we will approach the whole thing from a medical
This is the direction we are going to take. And I don't think that this is going to be viable within 500 years. There is an example that I'm always happy to cite, that the speech recognition programs 20 years ago were only available to people who had the patience of being trained for us, because that was the only way of how computers could be used. Now everybody has speech recognition software, and when you receive a WhatsApp message, you do hope that the person uses this program rather than registering an audio message or sending an audio message. But this is a good example that a problem and technology solving launched from the healthcare system reaches everybody. That's good. But there is an important point that was missed. So this thing first came to the awareness of the people 20 years ago, but the development was started 40 years ago, the very moment when it became just good enough, then companies started to invest in it, started to buy it. So they just to relax. I would like to also ask...
part of our conversation, I would like to look at the audience a little bit. Where do you expect these superhumans emerging among us, who are actually older than 100-year-old, but they are living in a young body, so they do have the superhuman skills? Will they appear within a period of 10 years, 20 years, more than 50 years, or we will never get to that point? You can see the 4 answers, and I'm very curious about your opinion. What do you think? How many years do we need to have those more than 100-year-old transhumans with a young body in a young body? You can push the button now.
Okay, so they already are here. You know, the Hollywood actors are living suspiciously long, and there are suspiciously many.
A lot of young-looking people in the audience as well. Majority says that more than 50 years, it's very much possible that we will have transhumans living among us. So the thing that those answering question, more than 60% of those answering think that this will actually happen more than 50 years.
I had a chip implanted 10 years ago.
Implanted in my hands more than 10 years ago, and I really much like experimenting.
Now,
Theseus's boat is a myth.
Is a myth. And it is actually about changes through which you can retain your individuality. I already have an alter ego. I call it A. David Orban, and it was actually Isaac Asimov who stated that if you build a robot, you have to add an R to the name, and you can already talk to this A, to the avatar, like as if you were talking to me. Now, if I told my wife that, she would slap me in the face. But the question is, when we will come to the point that when somebody would like to ask for an advice from me, and this is quite expensive, it will be less expensive if they solve matters on basis of my experience.
For sure. Luckily, probably we will have a long time to have more and more discussion about this topic, but it won't happen today because we are approaching the end of our conversation. If I want to actually give a framework to our discussion and stating that the future will be bright shortly, can you also explain what is your view on the future? What are you motivated by? What kind of future image is in front of you?
Well, one of the objectives would be that it should be similar to what we have now, not from a technological point of view, but because technology is going to improve and develop. But I do believe that morals should be on the same level than what it is now, the morals of life. I don't think that we should be worried about these things. So when we are going to be integrated with machines, it is progressing continuously, but slow enough that it would look like a natural process. And I don't think that in the next 20 or 30 years we would have to worry that major changes will occur. So,
nicely, but slowly.
So it is.
Let's advance.
Yes, human happiness is the most important thing for the next 20, 30, 40 years.
Happy transhumans we can become.
Now that's gonna be tough.
Will be a huge march.
And this is never going to be happiness,
David?
never going to bring happiness. What I believe is that our degree of freedom is going to increase, and more people would be able to live with it, so that on basis of our human curiosity, we would not only be able to further progress in the 10 years, but rather in the next 10 million years to realize how the universe works together with robots and with artificial intelligence.
Gergely, last but not least, do you have anything to add?
Well, you know, there is a capsule that is already implanted in mice where you don't have to train your muscles.
Here, bored of doing exercises. Jason Silva himself also have a closing thought. So let's have a look at what he expects from the future.
Escape velocity. We're hitting bullet time. We're moving into a world, as Arthur C. Clarke said, where any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. As we imagine, so it becomes. And so whatever the implications here for me are, especially if you zoom out, if you look at human progress, it's increasingly looking like we're thinking ourselves into existence. Our virtual imaginings are spilling out of our minds in front of our eyes. The coevolution of humans and technology is only accelerating this process. But we're becoming, I think, star makers, you know, to put reference to that famous science fiction book. Like, I truly think that is our destiny. Ad astra. You know, I'm reminded of David Deutsch. He had this wonderful TED Talk called, he said, chemical scum who dream of distant quasars. And so he starts this talk, you know, of course, referring to this nihilistic view of human beings, right? That we are just chemical scum, you know, a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam, as Carl Sagan used to say. And you know, that's kind of depressing, and I suppose that he was saying that so that we would kind of get over our trivial and petty concerns. We're just a mote of dust. We're just chemical scum. But I don't think that's the case at all. And what David Deutsch explains in his talk was that at first, in the early universe, big, dumb things affected all things, right? So like big, like interstellar events and the explosions of stars, you know, big, dumb processes kind of affected everything. But then we got to the origin of life on this planet. And first with photosynthesis, you had this tiny little chemical process harnessing starlight that terraformed the entire planet. It transformed the chemical composition and constitution of the surface of the planet. So suddenly you had small things, small processes that could affect big things. That was a big switch. And that has sort of reached its pinnacle with humans and now with artificial intelligence. So now we have what? We have thinking minds, and then we have digital algorithms, right? Tiny, 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 minuscule, almost dematerialized intelligence, synthesized electrified intelligence that can design processes that can potentially harness starlight, that can build Dyson spheres. And so he says that the destiny of the universe, our destiny, is to turn the universe into something that is conscious, to basically turn matter into a programmable medium that reflects the intentionality of life and sentience, you know, to lead us towards some omega point where the universe wakes up. So we may have started as chemical scum that dreams of distant quasars, but we're increasingly having the capacity to actualize those dreams into matter. And that, to cast our dreams into matter, it may begin with longevity and arresting the aging process, but it ends with us turning ourselves into gods, and nothing else will do. Do not go quietly into that good night, as Dylan Thomas says, but rage, rage, rage against the dying of the light. Together we shall drink the wine of centuries unborn, as Robert Ettinger said.
I'm really sorry that now, today, in this situation, we only had this much time to discuss these topics, but in the near future, or if we figured out the secret to longevity, even going forward, we will have time to continue this. I hope that you are relieved instead of being afraid about the future, and the future is going to be exciting, and it has many opportunities. Thank you very much for your participation and the discussion, and thank you very much for all of our viewers, and see you in 1 year in the near future, which will be the sixth MVM Future Talks. Thank you, goodbye.